Happy Friday, everybody. It's Career Happy Hour. That's the hashtag we're using today. I'm glad that the streaming service on LinkedIn is working today. I'm Andrew Beach. I am a teacher of self education. I help professionals communicate their value to find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. If you could just leave any questions you have in the chat box, I'm happy to answer anything related to your career, personal, professional branding, interviewing, market planning. By the way, for those folks in the United States, happy Thanksgiving. Good to have you here today. Again, every Friday, 3 o'clock p.m., I made a promise that I'm going to show up here live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook. I have a Facebook group where I'm sharing this information. You're welcome to join me over there, but most of my tribe exists on LinkedIn. And if that's you, let me know what your favorite part of the Thanksgiving meal is, if that's something you're into. Me, I love stuffing. I could do without the rest of it as long as I had stuffing. I don't know about you. So if you're joining from outside the United States, you may not know what that is, but I have a number of topics today that we're going to cover. A lot of exciting stuff. So if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer. Good to see you all here on Friday. Some might call this Black Friday, and you might be out shopping for Christmas. I've sell a lot of good deals online too, so that's good stuff. We can use those marketing messages to our value, to our benefit. Not that I'm going to provide you any marketing messages today. Little agua, wet the whistle. So here's some things to think about today. Let's just talk a little bit about what's happening and what has happened this week and recently. I've had a lot of conversations with coaching clients recently about who am I, right? Finding me or finding you and being me or being you. And a lot of us are given tasks or assigned work, and often we don't feel we have permission to advocate for our own satisfaction on the job. We talked about that, I think, in the podcast a few episodes ago, the number one key to job satisfaction. Speaking of the podcast, we do have a new episode that came out on Wednesday. It was late in the day. It was one of our Q&A episodes Scott and I did. If you're not familiar with our podcast, I'll put that in the chat. It's Jobseekers Radio. And Jobseekers Radio is an opportunity for Scott and I to share some of our best practices, things that we've done to actually to deal with, cope with, help people manage the difficulty around job search if you're not used to doing it. Scott and I have both been on the market multiple times in our career. So the episodes I wanted to talk to you about today, the first one is what do you do when you feel stuck? And that's the one we just released this week. It was a very interesting Q&A episode, and you should take a listen to that. The one coming out next week is actually, how do you know if networking will actually lead to a job? And we cover a lot of the topics about what are some of the things that can happen during a networking conversation that could actually lead you to employment. And I think that's really valuable. Again, if you're just joining us, go ahead and leave any questions you have about career or, job search in the chat. I'm happy to answer. So about this idea of finding you and being you, that's coming down to personal and professional branding. And really, it's an opportunity for you to discover some of the language that you can use to describe yourself. I'm always advocating distancing yourself from your job title at company, because that doesn't communicate value to anybody but your company. So you're doing a great job building a brand for your company. How is that working out for you, per se? And really finding that language is really important. For me, even though I consider myself an executive coach or even a career counselor or a career coach, whatever you want to call that, a leadership coach, there's a lot of titles that I could fulfill. But that's not, as Simon Sinek says, that's not who I am or why I do what I do. Why do I do what I do? Well, I really help people understand, their value so they can communicate that to other people. And that's when I came up with Teacher of Self-Education. I teach people about themselves so that they can be better. They can communicate themselves better, so they can advocate for themselves better, so they can take agency in their career future. I feel like that's what I was put here to do. Now, why do I do that? Well, I've seen the pain that people undergo to understand themselves, communicate that to other people so they can find employment and do the things in life that they would love to do. And often that's looking at what you do on the job from an outside in type of perspective. So you're communicating what you're seeing in yourself from the outside. And sometimes that's a little weird, an out of body experience, if you want to call it that, where you actually look at what you're doing and then describe that to people. Not using any kind of, how would you say it, buzzwords or keywords. It's how would you describe what you do? So when I look at how I help people, I really process what they're saying to me, and I have this ability to hear what they're saying and reflect back to them what I heard. And that helps them be able to communicate well. So I see myself kind of as a filter to understand the truth about you. And that's something, so when I start looking at it that way, as I'm walking through a series of steps, or I'm seeing what I'm doing that give me joy and fulfillment and excitement and enthusiasm, and those are the things I want to talk about. There's plenty of things I'm good at that I probably shouldn't talk about or even include in my brand. But so that's part of it. That's that outside in communication, because that's what people are going to see you doing and doing well. And it also allows you to have the opportunity to feel, okay, when I'm doing this thing, do I feel worthy? Do I feel valuable? Do I feel like I'm making a contribution? And so if you're looking at it from the outside and you see all the things you're doing, but you didn't feel worthy, nor did you feel like you made a solid contribution doing that work, or you felt fulfilled, then there wouldn't be any positive results. Make sure that when you're describing yourself, talk about the positive results you get in that scenario. What is the outcome that you generated, even though it may not have been immeasurable that anybody was tracking? Those are things to think about. If you hear something in the background, that's probably my puppy, but I'll try not to get her too excited. She might knock over my green screen and expose the true things behind me here. But yes, so feeling worthy, positive results, and sometimes when you start looking at your past, there may be some things that happened where a very strong memory was locked in. Where, you know what, when I did that for this company, here's what I was doing, and I really appreciated that. And I have a number of those that I've documented and can still remember solidly several decades later. I can still feel these memories. And what is that for you? What is it for you that you have that's a solid memory? It could be a personal story. The funny thing is, people think there's a professional me, there's a personal me, there's me as a role that I play, maybe as a family member or a father or a husband or a wife or a spouse, whatever that looks like. So we feel like we have these different identities when truthfully you're just one person, an integrated human being. And part of the process in working through branding involves understanding that you have value, that it's a positive outcome, that there's things that you can describe as an individual, and those may come from personal stories. I've had people document some pretty spectacular personal stories, and some of them did not come from a positive place, but they ended up in a positive place. And it started off negative, but there was a journey where they got to the positive, and they felt good about the fact that they overcame a pretty substantial obstacle. What is that obstacle for you? There might be something there that you could lean into. And through this process of documenting these different experiences, what you'll find is language, right? Maybe something that you hadn't thought about before. Like, what was I doing? Oh, well, I was navigating. Navigating? Well, I've never seen that in a job description before, but it's certainly something you can use in a brand. I help people navigate the treacherous waters of job search to come out the other side with the how would you say it, with little or no damage to their reputation, right? So we start wrestling. I call it wrestling because you know what? It is wrestling. There may be a way that you've been describing yourself for a long time, and we need to use something different. We need to look at it differently and approach it differently so that we can then understand better how to successfully communicate to other people. So that's something to think about there. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave those in the chat. I'm happy to answer. Chat's over on the side here, whether you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube or Periscope. Most of my tribe is here on LinkedIn, so if you have any questions here at LinkedIn, go ahead and put them in the chat if you would, please. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back to my notes. Okay, folks. Anybody out there have a question? Happy to answer. We're going into the holidays here, and what I found is a lot of people are taking time off. Yes. They have margins in their calendars. Yes. And if you're looking to make connections with people, now is a good time to do it. They're generally, not always, more happy to meet with people because they have the opportunity to do so and may not have had that opportunity before. So I don't see any questions in the chat. Can somebody type in the chat and then let me know that you're actually hearing and seeing this? And just let me know where you're joining from. This system is good, but it's not perfect, so I want to make sure that everybody is here and they can see and hear me. Happy to answer any questions that you have. Looks like we got there's people here in the stream on Facebook. Well, I'm wondering if this thing is even, it says it's live. Huh. Anybody out there? Sajid. I see Sajid. Thank you for that thumbs up. Appreciate you. So it looks like this thing may or may not be working. If you could let me know where you're joining from, just type in the chat, please. I'd appreciate that just to know that this thing is working. Ah, there it goes. Gosh, I had to refresh the screen. That's crazy. Yes, you can hear. Okay, how should we adjust our job search over the next few weeks? You should double down on the networking piece. And yes, you can still do applications, grant. I don't doubt that that's a good way to get some traction potentially with an employer, but I would double down on the networking. So if we're talking over the holidays, the next few weeks, I would try to find any and every way to meet, I don't know, set yourself a stretch goal. Maybe if you're used to meeting 2 people a week, why don't you see if you could meet 2 people a day? Could you do that? Could you meet 2 new people every day until, let's say, the week before Christmas? Could you do that? I jokingly, tongue-in-cheek, had indicated that, you should hang out wherever the local place is that has all the Christmas, the company Christmas parties, right? They always go to some hotel maybe, or they have it at the company. Crash some Christmas parties. I know that sounds funny, but you'd be surprised how many places like that are public that kind of, they kind of drip over into a bar or into a lobby, and you have a chance to meet some new people. Be creative. If there's a company you've always wanted to work for, where do they eat lunch? Do they go to a common restaurant every day? Do they wear a badge and you could see, okay, hey, I come to this place for lunch and I can see everybody with the badge that has it on, like not far from my place is Nike. And, so maybe these people stay on campus to eat lunch, but they might go off campus to eat lunch and they still have their badge on. And you can strike up conversation with them about, I don't know, the holidays, the weather, whatever it takes to get started. So think about that. Think about different ways, unique ways to take advantage. Joanne, welcome. Thank you for the question. Hi, Andrew. We often hear about not dating ourselves in our resume. I have relevant experience from a first job 20 years ago under additional experience in a resume, but how do we deal with it on LinkedIn profile. You don't put it on the LinkedIn profile. So I honestly, I have more experience than actually I have probably 20 years experience on the profile now that I think about it. I think we should not get wrapped around the axle and too worried about our resume or our LinkedIn profile. I believe that if I'm networking with a human being, I don't have to have a LinkedIn profile. I don't have to have a resume that's perfect. I don't even have to bring a resume to a networking conversation. And the nice thing is they will accept you for how you present yourself to them, if that makes sense. Again, I would lean into double down on the networking side. Often we hold all the people at arm's length, stand behind our resume and our LinkedIn profile, and then I only know this, Joanne, because I've done it, okay? And I've seen a lot of candidates that I coach do it. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and take a look at, how can I find the right people to talk to about my strengths, my skills, so that they can make a decision on my candidacy without a resume, without a LinkedIn profile. Not that those things aren't important to start conversations occasionally, but I think we get too worried about dating ourselves when truthfully, if we're letting the resume do the speaking for us, we're at a disadvantage. It's never going to communicate as well as the in-person you, or, LinkedIn is good, it's great. I can have video conversations like this and people get a feel much better than my resume. So yeah, there's actually a lot more value you get out of the LinkedIn profile than you do a resume. Any day of the week, I can be out here talking about my philosophies. And for you, if that's compliance, maybe you start talking about best practices around compliance and you publish an article here on LinkedIn about best practices for compliance in whatever industry you are pursuing. And then you share that with some relevant groups and you do a little promotion and you leverage that to get some quotes or some interviews to understand better best practice, to improve and modify and customize, level up your understanding of domain expertise in compliance. So follow-on question from Joanne, agreed, but when we apply for positions, don't recruiters check it against our LinkedIn profiles? If you're going to get a job in recruitment, then I would be worried about that. I like the idea that, yes, they're going to audit that. Yes. So the way to get around that really is to understand that the hiring process, as many people see it, is a front door process, meaning they identify a need, the company that is. They get with HR and they develop a job requisition. They then hand it off to the interwebs or their ATS, and then they accept all these applicants, right? And so from the outside, that's what people think the hiring process is. That's great. It's a process. What we don't know is at the front end, the hiring manager is also talking to their colleagues, talking to people inside the department. People inside the department are identifying potential candidates to fast track them into the interview process. So yes, if we're going cold from the outside, our odds of success are pretty low. So so not this is right or wrong, good or bad, but when I hear things like this from candidates, it's because they're over-reliant on resume application and not investing enough time, energy, and effort in building relationships so they can push their application into the interview. Okay? So that getting over that hurdle. So I guess the question I would have for you is, are you running into roadblocks? And this is a question that everybody could answer for themselves. Are you running into roadblocks getting interviews? Or do you have interviews? If you're getting interviews, then, good. Keep using that resume. Keep moving forward with your applications. If you're not, then yes, maybe some adjustments on the resume, but also double down on your networking. Just take this next 4 or 5 weeks, much like it looks like the Grant took my challenge. Can I meet 2 new people every day until the week before Christmas? What would that be? That's just two, maybe 3 weeks. Okay, so we're talking 5 days a week, 3 weeks. That's 15 days, 2 people a day. Could you meet 30 new people? Now, they don't have to be in your domain, but it's just a challenge, right? It could be somebody at a target company. It could be an old friend, okay? Could be a lot of things. And yes, companies will be audit. Simple answer, Joanne. Yes, companies will audit your resume against your LinkedIn profile, but that's a good thing. I want them auditing that. I want them seeing my LinkedIn profile. Now, does it have to match? Well, it has to be similar. It can't be so dissimilar that you create a question in the mind of that hiring team. But again, if I'm going in there and I'm having conversation with peers and hiring managers about my skills, they might create a job posting for me. I've seen this where there was a great relationship inside. They positioned themselves well. They had strategic discussions about what the firm needed. And they said, you know what, we're going to open up a requisition next year or next quarter. So you're ahead of the process, but we might accelerate that because we think you're the right person for the job. And we'd rather get that started now than later. Don't overlook the value of that networking piece. But thanks for that question. If you have a question, go ahead and leave it in the chat. Use the hashtag Career Happy Hour. Yes, it's Friday and it's happy hour somewhere, isn't it? And so I'm here every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. Go ahead and join me here. You can also catch me on Jobseekers Radio. It's jobseekersradio.com/listen. That's in the chat. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. Good to see all of you here. Who else do we have join up here? Let's see. Donald, welcome. Good to have you. If you're just joining us, there's a chat over on the side. You're welcome to put any questions you can there. For some reason, the chats were not coming in, so I'll have to continue refreshing the page. Grant, follow-on question. What is the best way to reach back out to a company job recruiter that you had a positive connection with him and the hiring manager but never heard back after a couple of interviews? In my scenario, my interviews was on speculation that they would have a job posting but nothing posted in 3 weeks. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's where I'd have to get more detail about your situation. But truthfully, the best thing you can do in any process is make sure that you collect one piece of information from anybody that you interact with. Just one. Can you guess what that is? It's actually the cell phone number. So if I got a recruiter or a hiring manager or whatever, I am going to do everything I can to make it very easy for them to give me a cell number. So if I was going to meet them and it was at their place of business, but I was running late, I'd like to have your cell number so I can make sure if something happens, I have a way to get a hold of you. Would that be okay? Now, for those who don't ask, they don't get. But those who ask, sometimes they get. So I would make sure you're collecting that. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I haven't seen any company that the only door is through the people that you just referred to, the recruiter and that hiring manager after a couple interviews. There's probably somebody else, if that's a company you want to work for. If it's so you have some decisions to make. Is this a company I want to work for? And is it a place that I can see myself? Do I like the teams there? Right? Is it worthy of my time, energy, and effort to continue knocking on other doors in that place until someone says yes? Okay. Let me refresh this page again because the chats aren't coming in. If you guys can let me know if you can hear me still. Looks like there's a handful of people here. If you have any questions at all, put them in the chat. Happy to answer. Let's see if I can. Good. You did get his cell number. Good. So, I don't know if you've had any opportunity to call and thank them. Often reaching out sometimes is, hey, how's this thing going? Where's the requisition? Okay. Where's this thing? How's it going? Where's the requisition? Right? Where's the job posting? I don't see the job posting. Do I need to apply for something? Right? It's all about me rather than just saying, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have that conversation or that interview or that whatever. Okay. Gratitude will get you a long way. Another thing that gets you a long way, not that I am a believer in kissing, brown nosing, whatever you want to call it. But offer them compliments. I really appreciate the way you did this or handled that situation or the good work you're doing in this place. Just recognize them for that. If you had some strategic discussion during that conversation, maybe you share an article, an industry publication, or whatever, just to say, hey, based on our conversation, it looks like we have some synergies in developing these kind of things. Here's an article that I thought was appropriate, and I thought you'd benefit from reading it. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I'll talk to you on the other side. Okay. I would only text them if you've already texted them. Okay, but I'm a firm believer in use whatever method they're going to respond by. So if that's email, use email. If it's cell phone, use cell phone. If it's text, use text. So whatever method you've been corresponding with them and they've been responding to is what I would talk about. Okay. Lisha, thank you. Thank you for coming in. Do you have any advice on networking in the office? Yes, do it. I recently got an internship. Want to talk to my colleagues, but they seem really busy. Be valuable to them. Find out what's important to them. There's a reason that they're really busy. What could you do to make them less busy? What could you do to support their efforts so that they have some margin so that you can have those conversations? Be of value first. Make a contribution first. And I think it'll work out fine for you. Find out why everybody is so busy. Or is that your own, and I recognize that there's different cultural values based on where you grew up and what your family says. And gosh, I don't want to interrupt somebody. That would be rude. They're always busy. I don't want to waste their time. Right? We have all these ideas in our head that we really need to put in our back pocket and say, you know what? I need to really get with this person and see how I can add value to them. Now, there's two things there. In fact, I had that conversation with a coaching client today, is that if you think everybody you reach out to is going to say yes, they're not. Everybody you reach out to is one person that you can either have a conversation with or not. And if you do, great. If you don't, that's okay too. Find a better time for them, or maybe they're not strategic to your future, or maybe they're just not somebody you're ever going to contact or get in connection with. And so whatever that is, if you're onboarding with a new internship, I would absolutely, depending on the length of your internship, I would start mapping out the people that are strategic in that organization for the kind of work I want to do. So who are the leaders? Who are the peers? Who are the people that you can see actually getting things done? Who do you feel is influential with the leadership? Develop relationships with those folks. Offer to take them to lunch. Meet them early, or always be the one in early and the last one to leave. That kind of thing. So there's virtues that you can display that will give people the opportunity to see you as a valued asset, and then they'll rely on you to do that. So, yes, I would pick up a book. Let me see if I can find it on Amazon. It's actually out of print. It's by Douglas B. Richardson. And so if you haven't done, and so the only thing I would say when you look at this this book is that it's out of print, yes, and it was written I think in the 90s. And so they use a lot of letters and so forth. So there wasn't social media or email as ubiquitous as it is today. And so I would just substitute email, maybe LinkedIn message for what we're talking about here. Okay, and I'll put that I'll put it in the chat here. It's literally the one book that I recommend for networking, especially for specifically for jobs, because it's the only one that I've found that tells you how to do it, or at least gives you a good idea on how to do it. Because everybody knows and everybody espouses and everybody will talk ad nauseum about how networking is the way to go. But they never tell you really kind of how to do it. They just say, go do it. And I don't find that very, very helpful. Okay? What I find helpful is how should I do it? How should I prepare it? What should I say? And that sort of thing. And I also have an online course that does that. So if you're interested, I'll put that. Yeah, you're welcome. I think it's brandingdynamo.com. There we go. Okay. So my course, that's my course website. And should be able to find there some of the courses that I offer about finding opportunities without a resume, and that helps build your brand, your branding statement, you know, how to build a plan, a marketing plan, a dream job description, whatever you call it. And then it also walks you through the steps on how to do the networking. So it's really a three-part process. And there's a self-study one there. There's one where you can actually get some coaching from me, like a package. So good. You're welcome. All right, folks. Well, we're coming up to the end here. It's been about a half an hour. If you have any other questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat. I'm happy to answer anything that you have regarding interviewing, market planning, anything to do with career, leadership, resources you need, a burning question you've always had in your mind, anything at all. I'm wondering if let me refresh the screen here because the chats don't appear to be coming in. I'll put that over here too. All right, folks. Well, have a good weekend. We'll see you here next Friday for Career Happy Hour. I appreciate you and everything you do. So whatever it is, find yourself, who you are, and make a contribution. Take care. Have a great weekend.